this is something different to what I've given you before. This is about digital modes, JT65HF and JT9. Now I know one or two people in the club at least are using it, and I started in April, and the reason for that was to get some QSOs where I might not otherwise get any because of the dire conditions on the bands. Now with JT65 you can get down to minus 24 dB, and with JT9 you can get down to minus 26. And I've had quite a number of QSOs at minus 20, believe me. So what I did was I downloaded the latest version, WSJT-X version 1.7. I don't recommend anyone to use an earlier version because this one's got a different decoding system in it and different presentation, which is far better than the previous things. So I got going on it.
Sorry, what's the mode, Eddie?
JT65HF.
Okay.
It's also called JT65A.
Thank you.
And there's JT9. Now when you hear it on the radio, it goes, the JT65 in particular goes ding-ling-ling-ling-ling, it's like bells. The presentation, when you see it on the screen, is JT9. It looks a bit like PSK31. It's a single little line down your screen. Easily confused with other things. But JT65, you've got a lower, almost like a continuous mark when it comes up, and little dots on either side of it.
Yeah, 65 different tones.
That's the way, yep. And those are the two I use. Now, in the software, it's quite easy to set it up, and you've got two parts in there. You've got a section of software you use for receiving things. You want to call somebody who's calling, and there's another one where you can call CQ yourself. For about 4 in each. Now there are no contests, and you'll know why, because if you've tried it, each QSO takes 5 to 6 minutes. Right, armchair step, but it's dead silent. I work in complete silence all the time, and it's a very good idea when, as recently, there was a contest on just about every other mode on the band that I wanted to use. So how the hell do you get a contact unless you go in a contest? Right, so you got the JT65 or JT9. And that's what I do. I only started in April, and I've had no problems with it in the setup. There are lots of alternatives. There's a moon bounce thing, there's a meteor scatter thing. There are all sorts of variations in there. If you've got a very wide receiver, and I mean wide, 5 kilohertz, which is like a bundle, you can set up JT9 and JT65 together. I don't. I set them up separately because they require about a 2.5 kilohertz bandwidth. Power-wise, well, I tend to go from 10 watts to 100. That depends upon the conditions and who I'm after. Now you've got to realise that it's a continuous mode thing, so watch your transmitter and your power supplies. If the AM recommendation is 25 watts, don't exceed it. I get away with 100 watts for a simple dodge that I've used for years. I put 5 watts from a 100 watt piece of gear, which is running flat out, into a linear which will work quite comfortably all day at about 100 watts. That's it. Anyone can do it. And there are lots of people on JT65HF. You might look around the rest of the band and not see a damn thing. But JT65, there's nearly always someone there. Not so many on JT9 because it's fairly new. But it has that advantage. And you know, it's I've done pretty well with it on simple aerials because that's all I've got. I can't do any more than that.
What bands do you operate, Eddie?
I operate at the moment mostly 17 to 40. Well, I've been on 10 down to 40, and I've had QSOs on 10 and 12 and where you can't even hear a damn thing. Because bear in mind, your hearing disappears at minus 15 dB. Yet on this, minus 25 dB is nothing unusual. There's a large proportion of my contacts have been at that level. So you can do it. And as I say, since April, well, I haven't been on there all the time. I've been on there sometimes. I've got 45 countries in all parts of the world except VK. And the only reason I haven't got a VK is because I haven't heard one. And, you know, you don't need sophisticated gear. I've got a Windows 7 Professional set up on my computer. I've got a Signal Link sound card, and I recommend you to use one, not the computer sound card, it's not good enough. And TS480 or FT817 to drive the linear. The thing you've got to watch with an FT817 is the power, because the recommended maximum AM is only 1.5 watts. Drive it too hard, you'll blow its mind. So, you know, but with that, of course, and the suitable equipment, you've got to work to 400 odd megs if you want it. It switches the two frequencies, one for JT9, one for JT65. You set it up, it switches on automatically. No trouble at all.
Brilliant. Thank you, Eddie.
Any questions?
I have one, Eddie. Have you looked at VHF at all? Because I understand from what I see that a lot of long distance contacts are being made on JT65, where it used to be CW was the way it was done. It's now really moved over. Sporadic E has moved over a lot to JT65.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. I mean, I've had days when it's been difficult, and I've had days when I've reeled them off one after the other. And sometimes, I mean, as I say, it's been the only way to get them. Because you listen on the band, it's dead. Right, you go up to the JT65 or 8 or JT9, you'll find loads of them on JT65, likely it's not. I mean, 17 metres isn't open all the time. It is on JT65 a lot of the time. Even 10 metres. First contact I had on 10 metres was about minus 20. There you go.
To answer your question, I mean, there was one, this is about 4 or 5 days ago, there was a very marginal opening on 6 metres.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have been possible to work the station, but there was a very weak path open on 6 metres to Q8.
Yeah.
And I was able to work 2 Q80 stations, 9K2 stations, on 6 metres JT65. And on the waterfall, you can only just actually make out the different tones. It's barely visually discernible.
Yeah. If I can see that little thin yellow line and it comes up minus 20, I'm in.
Yeah, the other thing I can recommend is go to PSK Reporter website.
Yes.
Because regardless of whether you're calling CQ or whether you're working stations, you can actually see how far you can be heard by other monitoring stations.
That's right.
It's quite surprising. I've certainly had reports of even on 80 metres of being picked up in Australia.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, my antenna system at the moment is a compromise because I can't work on the bands. The environment around me is deteriorating in recent years, but I quite enjoy it. You know, it's for everybody, as long as you've got patience.
Yes.
I wish more people would use JT9 on the lower bands. For which
Oh
it's
God,
designed.
I do as well because
Lots
it's
of
such.
activity on 20, but I was listening on, I've listened for a long time on 80 metres, and you hardly hear anyone on JT9, and that's the ideal band for it.
Of course it is, because one of the things is it's so narrow compared with JT65.
Exactly.
For every JT65 signal, it looks, you're talking about
It's about 200 hertz bandwidth.
essentially, and JT9 is like that. You get perhaps 10 or 20 stations in the space of one JT65.
Go on, John, you're bound to.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie. Lovely to see you. Okay.